hope everyone is having a good day.
What's up, everybody?
We wanted to talk to you a few moments about blended families because we are a blended family. When I met this young stallion here, I already had a child, but I had known Gabriel before I had my son. We started dating when he was 1 and we married when my son was 4. So my son had known Gabriel all of his life, but we were still a blended family. And that was my first time living with a man when I got married. Like I said, my father was not in my life like that. So that was really my first time living with a man. And that was Israel's first time living with a man. So it was a transition time for us all. And we first got married. We had bought our house before we got married. We didn't move into the house until the day we got married. Israel had informed us he was not coming to live with us. He was 4. He told us then that that dad, which is Gabriel, should go back home to his parents, and I should go back home to my mom because that's where he was going. So for a year, we allowed him to stay with my mom because that was his home base. That was all that he knew. And I understood that was a scary thing for him to be in a new home with someone that he had never lived with before. So that was a transition for him. So for a year, he would come and stay with my mom during the week, and he would be with me on the weekends. And so that went on for about a year. And then one day he just came and said that he wanted to come home with me and Gabriel. And so we did. We allowed him, and that was the best thing for us to do because he needed time to process. The only home he had ever known was my mom's home. So that was a big transition for him. So now, blended families. This is a subject that's close to my heart because I oftentimes see, I can speak from a woman's perspective. We will marry a man, but it's difficult for us to allow him to parent our children. And for me, I don't know, was that difficult for me?
At the beginning, a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. We got to work on that.
So, again, I come from a single parent household, and I only knew a woman's perspective of doing things. So when it came time for a man to give his perspective and opinion, that was strange for me. So I struggled with that. But I knew that if I trusted this man enough to marry him, I could trust him with my son. And that changed everything for me because I trusted him enough to marry him. So I knew I could trust him with my son, and that was the best thing ever. I am more of a disciplinarian than my husband is, so that's another thing too. I didn't have to worry about the disciplinarian part because I was a disciplinarian. Oftentimes men are more than women. So I struggled more with him giving advice. Because again, I only heard a woman's perspective. I only heard a woman's voice, woman's advice. So when a man came in to give advice, I struggled with that because that authority, I never had that voice, that authority in my life like that. So I struggled with allowing him to give leadership and allowing him to speak to my son and have that control. I struggled with giving that control over to him. I'm gonna let him speak on that.
Man. Woo, 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 woo. Get a little choked up right here. I'm just messing. Yes, that was a struggle at the beginning. And I believe in some aspects that's going to be natural. Just as she said, she didn't see or have that man manly influence or guidance in that nature. So my dad and mom was there. I had a 2-parent household. And so the structure that I saw, me and her would have 2 different opinions and perspectives on it. Doesn't necessarily mean it was wrong, but when you're immature and you're learning, then you're gonna have disagreements, you're gonna be upset. And I don't believe now, looking at it, I don't believe I was trying to take over or take control. I was trying to give guidance in some aspects. And I'll tell you like this, from my perspective, when you don't know how to say certain things a certain way or do it a certain way because you're only used to what you've seen, I probably said some things in a manner that she could not receive it, in a manner that I was trying to give it. Doesn't mean I was wrong, doesn't mean that she was wrong, but neither one of us understood the dynamics of trying to communicate in that manner. What I saw and what she saw was night and day. What she experienced, what I experienced is night and day. So how do you blend a family together from 2 different perspectives without trial and error? Yeah, you can't. For me, with Israel, even though Israel wasn't gone the whole year like he stayed there like the whole year, but he was there 80% of the time, 20% of the time with us. And I used to tell her, I said, hey, that joker need to come to the house and be a part of the family and stuff. And then after we talked about it, I kind of understood her point of view, because when you're living with your grandparents and your mom, and that's the only thing you know, just taking you out of a home could cause some problems. Yes, my wife is more disciplinary than me. Now, when I get to that point of disciplinary, or I have to discipline, it takes a lot. I have a lot of patience in that area. A lot of patience. We grew up in a household where we always had people at the house and noise and fussing and fighting, playing and all that stuff. And so some things that would naturally bother her doesn't bother me. And she,
Explain the fussing and fighting and all that stuff.
the fussing and fighting on what?
People think your house was crazy. You really have fussing and fighting.
Oh, at my house? At my mom and dad's house? Oh no, we wasn't fussing and fighting like that. We talking about like siblings fussing and playing and fighting and arguing and all that stuff, and just the normal stuff. No, we didn't have all that fussing and fighting at the house with my parents and all that. Yeah, let's put that disclaimer in there. We didn't have that. And so when we brought our 2 homes together for Israel, at first it was a little struggle for him because he didn't want to leave. But moving forward a little bit, once he came into the house, unless you have something to say on that.
Yeah.
Hold on one second.
One thing I want parents to realize, when you are trying to blend families, we have to realize these children, they're not the ones that fell in love with somebody and decided to date and get married. So we're asking them to merge their lives and everything with our dream and our ideals. We are the ones that fell in love, decided to get married. Sometimes you move them away from their fathers and mothers and their friends and family, and you move to your new spouse's location. Sometimes the house that they grew up in, when you get married to someone, you move out of that house. So they're going through changes also. So oftentimes, I believe we as adults, we don't consider that. We don't consider their feelings, that they're giving up a life also. They're starting anew also. And so I think we have to be compassionate and be understanding. It's going to be a struggle. It's not going to be the Brady Bunch. It's going to be a struggle. And we have to recognize that and leave that door open, leave that line of communication open for them to tell you, hey, this is uncomfortable for me.
when she's speaking on that struggle, it is going to be a mental struggle for them, but how you handle it can make that situation harder or smoother. So for us, with Israel, that wasn't a hard transition. Once he came into the house, literally, he's 20 years old. I haven't had any major problems out of him when it comes to discipline or disrespect in any manner. And a lot of that has to do with the relationship with me and his mom, my wife. She laid a foundation that you're going to respect him, and there was already a foundation laid for me or in place that I was going to respect her and him. That doesn't happen in everybody's home. And so we're talking on blended families. For one, I only can speak from the male perspective. I lived with my parents. I lived on Fayetteville State campus for a year.
Bronco Pride.
Yeah, Bronco Pride. And I was getting ready to move out and move into an apartment with my boy Nettie. And my dad said, hey, we have enough space. Instead of y'all spending a lot of money, you come back home. And so until I got married, I stayed at my parents' house. Then right before we got married, we bought the home, like my wife said, and we renovated for about 3 to 4 months, and then we moved in. So I never really lived outside of my parents' home like that by myself. Some people might say, oh man, you was a grown man. Yep, I was a grown man. And I think, and I'm gonna jump off subject for a minute for blended families, but I think sometimes we kick our kids out a little too early to where they don't have the maturity to learn life before they learn life. All right, back onto the scheduled programming. I just had to throw that in. And so neither one of us really lived outside of the home like that. So when you're talking about blending in two cultures, you're talking about families. You're talking about two different cultures, two different ways of doing things. One have a single parent home, one has a two-parent home. I never raised kids before. I didn't have any children. So that was new for me. And I'll say for one thing, I wasn't going to be one that was going to be almost like a territorial type of person. This is my home. You just going to follow by my rules. This is how it goes, da-da-da-da-da. That was never my personality or my way of doing things. I wanted to make sure that he felt comfortable, she felt comfortable. But I'll tell you the truth, in my immaturity, I might not have done as well in some areas with that. You know what I'm saying? We were growing up together, learning this life together. So blended families, especially from a man perspective, we can't come into a household of a woman and children, or a woman and child, and try to lay down the law. Because you have to understand, they had laws before you came in. They had their own set of guidelines before you came in. And so now, even though you have some principles or laws or guidance that might be better, if I come in trying to throw it down their throat to do it my way, what have I done? I've made resentment. I've made kids not to like me. I've made the wife to have some problems with me, because guess what? That's her children. That's her children, man. Those women ain't playing with those kids. I had to tell my wife, I said, man, you kiss these kids more than you kiss me. And my kids was in the teenagers. Then we changed the thing. You know what? These jokers gonna be gone soon. We better start kissing each other a little bit more, for we don't like each other. Nothing. I ain't gonna say what I was gonna say. But blended families are precious to me as well, because like my wife said, sometimes we negate that these kids have feelings as well. We think because they're 2 and 3, we don't know the dynamic of that mother and that child, or the father or the stepfather or whoever was before, and you're coming in being another face to an already established situation. So we're learning. We're still learning.
19 minutes 48 seconds per mile.
And I think it's very important for the new person that's coming in to not be intimidated by the relationship that the parent and the children have already established. And that can be a hard thing. Like my husband said, that person and their children have already established their norm. And I think when you come into that new family, conversations should be had about expectations. Oftentimes we think the other person should know what to do. Like my husband said, he didn't have any children, so he had to learn a lot of things, and I had never lived with a man, so I had to learn a lot of things. And my son, I wanted to give him that time with my mom because I knew that was his safe place. That was the home that he had from his birth. You know, he came home from the hospital to that house, so that's all he knew was that home for 4 years. And so when he finally decided he wanted to come live with us, it was about 9 months to a year. I can't remember exactly, but he was ready. He was excited, and we didn't have any problems. And I'm glad that we did it that way because it could have been different. If we would have snatched him up, he could have had resentment in his heart towards Gabriel. And another thing too, I let my son decide what he wanted to call Gabriel, either Mr. Gabriel or Dad. That was the options that he had because I didn't want him to feel like I was forcing him to call a man Dad that he didn't want to call a man Dad. So I gave him that choice, Mr. Gabriel or Dad, and he chose Dad. So I think it's very important to listen to your children and that new parent, and you have to get together and create guidelines for your new home because you are merging families together. So it's important to create guidelines, to create what your new family is going to be. It's important to include that. I tried to include, I didn't want him to ever feel like it was me and Israel against him, or just me and Israel and he was coming along for the ride. I really wanted him to be a part and to sow into my son because I saw something in him. I chose him as a spouse because that was one thing. I knew he would be a good father. I knew he would be a good father. I knew he would be a good role model. I knew he was a man of God, and he can pour those same principles and values into my son. That was very important to me. And so I knew in order for it to work out and be smooth, I would have to trust him. Like I said, I trusted you enough to marry you. I'm going to trust you with my children. And one thing that we tried to do is if we had disagreement about something, we tried to have it between me and him. If I didn't like how he did something, I would try to, tell him I wasn't comfortable with that, or I didn't like that. And so that's one thing. And when you're bringing families together, the children shouldn't see you argue about the differences. They're going to pick up on the disagreements. So definitely, if something is not going the way that you think it should, bring that person to the side and say, I don't like how you talk to my son, or I don't like how you talk to my daughter, or the new parent that's coming in. He might feel that you're not, or she might not feel that you need to have more discipline or more structure. Listen to that person. Don't take it as an attack on your parenthood. Listen to that person.
Man, it's cold. It's cold out here. And we're out here trying to give some good nuggets that can start you off pretty good. And even if you are already establishing a relationship where you are a blended family and things have not gone as smoothly as you would like, there's never, or it's never too late to try to rectify some things to make that relationship better. I know of families, I know of young men, young women that say, I'm having problems with my step parents, or I don't like this or that about the changes or the rules that has established since my mother or my father has gotten married or have blended in another family. And in our situation, I didn't have any kids, so Israel didn't have to blend in with other kids. That's major too. When you have another family that has children already, that already have established rules, and you're bringing two families together, whether that spouse has died or whatever, that husband or wife is remarrying, what do you do when the kids are having problems? Man, communication is a must. And I this is my wife's word, I admonish you to go ahead and have conversation and dialogue with those children. Not saying that they make the rules, but they put emphasis on how they're feeling. They put emphasis on, well, Dad, I like this person because of this, or Mom, I like this person because of this, vice versa. And then you can give them input. You don't have to tell them all your business, but when you're in a situation like that, I believe that there should be some type of communication so that people are not going into the relationship blind.
And it's important as parents to never think that you are too grown or too old or too big to apologize to your children. That is so important. Oftentimes our children just want to hear that you're sorry, because as parents, we make mistakes. That's one thing I want us to remember. We are human and we make mistakes, and we have to be big enough and mature to say, you know what, I'm sorry. When I talk to my children, I don't curse at my children, anything like that. When I talk to them, I ask them, like, if I say shut up, I ask them, does that bother you? Because I don't want to say anything that will dampen their spirits. I don't want to say anything that will erode their self-esteem. So I come to them. We have one-on-ones, and I say, did shut up bother you? Or when I said this, did it bother you? Because I want to be right. I don't want to do anything that will cause them issues later on in life because of my misguidedness. So we have talks, and when I say, I'm sorry for when I said this, when I did this, or if I made you feel this way, please forgive me. They know that I'm not above apologizing to them. So it's very important that as parents, don't lose sight that they are human. They are people too, and it's okay to say I'm sorry. It doesn't make you less than if you apologize to your children. And it's so important in blended families that you spend time together before you get married. I know that it's difficult in this day and age with so much molestation and all this kind of stuff going on, but it's so important for those children and that man or woman to spend time with you and your kid as a unit, because that might not be something they can handle. We all know our children, so that might not be something they can handle. And like my husband said, don't go into the situation blindly. It's important to spend time to see how they interact. It's important to spend time to see some things with your own eyes before you get married. That person might not be the one for you with your children. So it's very important to spend time and interact with that person so you'll know, you'll have some kind of idea or a glimpse of what you're getting yourself into.
Now, our conversation might think like we're just straight up advocates for the kids. We are. And we're advocates for ourselves. That's the point we're trying to get across, that everybody, we have to be advocates for one another. And like my wife brought up, there's a lot of molestation, a lot of little girls and little boys that are getting messed over because girlfriends and boyfriends just go and just do all kind of crazy stuff in this world, and you really don't know someone until you spend time with them. And my wife didn't just let me just pick up Israel and just take him all kind of places and stuff when he was small. She ain't know me like that. You heard my voice go up a little bit because she ain't know me like that. That man, I'm very careful at who my daughter goes with. We was very careful. I tell you like this, I also careful that my son, Asaph, didn't He didn't go with nobody. I wasn't working like that, like a full-time job for a period of time, and he was with me 24/7. Unless he went to the daycare for a period of time, and the majority of that, he was with me. Now, after all that we have said today, you go talk to our kids, they might tell you a different story. Kids are gonna be kids. But I trust and believe they're gonna tell the truth. They're gonna say, hey, I have two loving parents. They don't like when we fuss at them for the little things to do. I'll be honest with you, I don't have bad kids. They might not want to clean up. They might not want to do something here and there. But because of the foundation that we've laid, and the thing is, we are still laying, no, we're not laying foundation. We are building upon that foundation and trying to make sure that we have a sturdy environment that when they get older, they'll be able to come to a house. Not a cracked up foundation that over time has withered down because the things that we said to them was just but a bunch of lies. The things we tried to show them was not truth. And so we're not trying to say that we're perfect. We made many mistakes. We made many mistakes. And some of the things that, like my wife said, we try not to discuss certain things in front of them. They might have heard something through the door a couple times. But we try to make sure that they were not privy to our disagreements of certain things in the atmosphere. Now, we're talking about blended families. And hopefully someone is listening to this will see that this is not a cookie cutter thing. The way I handle it might not be ideal for you to handle it in that manner. But one thing that I do say is communication and talking with one another and communicating with your kids set a great foundation as to how you should be able to navigate through those conversations or those situations.
I agree. Once that you get on the same team and recognize we are a team, things come into place. And he didn't come in with the attitude of this is I'm ahead, you do what I say. No, he took time to learn my son, his personality. And by us dating for a period of time before we got married and we were friends already, he already had a leg up. He already knew my son, his personality. We had spent time together, and we would go on trips together, like to the zoo, and he would just really make an effort to get to know my son. And so that made things a lot easier when it came time for us to join and become one, because my son already saw his heart. And I think it's important for us as the adults to show these children that I'm here for you, because oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes, a lot of these children, their biological father may not be very active in their life. And so here you come, and you have that attitude of, I'm the boss. Here's another man that is not treating me like I want to be treated. Another disappointment, another rejection. So it's very important as that new parent, when you come in, really show these kids your heart. Show them that I am here for you. I want to love you. Like he said, he never treated my son as a stepson. He never called him stepson. Show these children that I want to be a part of your life. I want to make your life better. You make my life better. And I think that you'll get some very positive results.
One more thing and I'm out. I was just thinking, you should be so blended that no one knows that you're blended.
That's right.
You should be so blended that no one knows that you are a blended family. Even when me and my wife were dating, people would say, oh man, that's a beautiful son.
He looks just like you.
I would never say, no, that ain't my son. That's my girlfriend's son, or that's my stepson. Never would you have ever heard that out of my mouth. Because I knew that where I was going. I knew where our relationship was going. So if people already recognize that he was my son, why say no, that's my stepson and I'm marrying his mama? That's profound. You should be so blended that others don't know that you are blended. Blended. Hold on one second. We just out here. We hear some noise, so you know we don't know what we got to do out here. Whether we got to run or help. So, but I believe that even now, I think someone asked my wife a couple years ago. She's like, I didn't know Gabriel had a son, because my son was like 18, 19. I didn't know Gabriel had a son. That's because it's none of your business. That's none of your business, for one. And number two, that is my son. I don't go around saying stepson. And I think sometimes when we put that in the atmospheres of our family, oh, that's my stepchild, or that, you have taken away, you negated the family structure. If Joseph would have went around town saying, Jesus, that ain't my son. That's the Son of God. He's my stepson. How does that even sound? That's very immature. And how do you think that makes the kids feel when you are already isolating them outside of the family structure? We're not beating up anybody. We're trying to give little nuggets we might have to change some things, because these kids grow up feeling isolated, having low self-esteem, and sometimes it's not even from the outside influence, it's from the inside, because of what we say and how we say it and how we treat one another. So the blended family structure, we calling this title Blended Families, but at the end, we just saying we're what? Family. We're a family. You got anything to say, babe?
Nope.
And we're out.